And greetings. Happy Monday. Thanks for tuning in here today, live and on demand here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. I'm Steve Deace, Todd Erzin, and Aaron McIntyre. They are here with me as well. Phone lines will be open next hour at 888-900-3393. That's the number, 888-900-3393 for next hour's weekly town hall. Here is what's on the table next hour. I received an email from a listener who was an enthusiastic Trump supporter 4 years ago and is thinking of abandoning ship right now. I'm going to give you in the audience a chance to respond to him, react to him. You can agree, disagree. I'm not going to put any ground rules on this at all. I just want to, we're being asked nowadays, listen more. Which, let me tell you what that usually means, by the way. What that usually means is, let me tell you what I think and what's up, and then you don't get to respond. That's what it usually means, right?
Really, because I thought that silence was complicity. I'm kind of confused.
Yes, silence is complicity if indeed at the end of me telling you what I think, you don't nod in assent to every last morsel and syllable of what I just ranted about. That's when it's complicity. If you just sit there and say, hey, I listened to you. Okay. Well, then you're complicit, because the only positions you could have opposite me would make you an evil, terrible person, right? Well, I'm actually going to listen. Because what's interesting to me about this conversation is I'm kind of on the other end of it from where I was 4 years ago. All right. I mean, at this time 4 years ago, there was nothing. I mean, I got offered a personal opportunity to go meet one-on-one with Donald Trump. There was nothing that you could present to me that would get me to consider voting for him. It's just too many gambles. To me, it was McCain, Romney, and Bush, but with less personal character, and there was no way I was gambling on that, right? We did all those shows, right? Okay. Well, 4 years later, now that we actually have a record, I'm pretty sold on voting for him. I wouldn't say it's 100%, but if it was today, I'd go in and do it without any reservation at all. So I am kind of more interested in what other people think about this. So I'm just going to present his frustration, and then I'm going to get out of the way and see how you respond at 888-900-3393. Steve at stevedeace.com is how you can email the program. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. And don't forget that you can get samples of this show that you can view yourself and then share with others at youtube.com/Steve Deace. youtube.com/Steve Deace. I know more and more of you are considering homeschooling, yet it foisted upon you here this year. And now you're thinking, you know what? Maybe we can do this from home, but could we get a better curriculum? Well, you're not alone. 40% of American families are considering homeschooling more than ever before right now. And during the COVID-19, that's because they re-engage with their children's educations and realize, hey, I don't know if I really appreciate much of what they're being taught. Well, that's where Freedom Project Academy comes in. It is here to help your children get back on track with a live, interactive, online educational experience with students from across the country. And from the comfort, convenience, and safety of home, children can receive an accredited, classical online education built on Judeo-Christian values for students K through 12. And they teach you at Freedom Project Academy how to think, not what to think. If you want to get more information about this, spots are filling up fast with open enrollment about to begin. So don't hesitate. Get your free information packet right now at freedomforschool.com. That's freedomforschool.com. Coming up here at the bottom of the hour, our good friend Bob Vander Plaats will be joining us. I mentioned the weekly town hall coming your way next hour. But first, before we get to all of that, here is Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Bending the Knee is the new Wearing the Mask. It was another weekend of super-duper peaceful protests. Just ask these Black Lives Matter demonstrators in Riverside, California. The protests were global as well, as thousands showed up in places like Parliament Square in the UK to protest police brutality in the U.S. Also in the UK, protesters tore down statues, including this one of the slave trader Edward Colston. They also graffitied a monument to Winston Churchill with the words, "He was racist." BBC News headline, 27 police officers injured during largely peaceful anti-racism protests in London. Back stateside, the name of the game was bowing the knee, like in Webster, Massachusetts, where Police Chief Michael Shaw gave in to protester demands that he lay down on his stomach. After that video cut off, protesters reportedly heckled him, saying it wasn't enough. In Cary, North Carolina, Black Lives Matter organizers demanded that local city officials get down on their hands and knees and wash their feet.
Stand in the gap and repent on behalf of Caucasian people.
National Guardsmen in Atlanta decided to dance in solidarity with the demonstrators.
Hey, break it down now. Break it down now. Break it down now.
Senators in Washington, D.C. took a knee. Mitt Romney did the most Mitt Romney thing ever.
And to make sure that people understand that Black Lives Matter.
Protesters in Austin, Texas attacked a black police officer. The pandemic of white guilt spread to the NFL as well, as Commissioner Roger Goodell taped what could have easily been mistaken for a hostage video to appease the mob.
We, the National Football League, condemn racism and the systematic oppression of black people. We, the National Football League, admit we were wrong for not listening to NFL players earlier and encourage all to speak out and peacefully protest.
New Orleans Saints quarterback Drew Brees flogged himself for the 666th time over the weekend.
I just want you to see in my eyes how sorry I am for the comments that I made yesterday.
Freedom fighter David French, your thoughts?
I think a mistake that he made was that I think he got lost in the form of the protest over the point of the protest. You don't take 345 years of legally sanctioned racism in a country that was often enforced by violence, remove it finally by the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and then in the ensuing 56 years, solve everything.
Well said, Mr. French.
In Iowa, a flood of former University of Iowa football players voiced their displeasure with the atmosphere surrounding the program during their time there. Kirk Ferentz is the longest tenured college football coach in the country, but many of the complaints were lobbed at strength and conditioning coach Chris Doyle, as instrumental a figure in Ferentz's tenure at Iowa as anyone. Former players complained of Coach Doyle's tone and borderline racist comments lobbed at them, mostly in the weight room. Doyle was placed on administrative leave over the weekend and issued a statement defending himself as well. In response, Black Lives Matter activists vandalized Kinnick Stadium as well as the statue of Niall Kinnick, a World War II veteran and Heisman Trophy winner who died during a training mission. The Minneapolis City Council voted yesterday on their intent to disband the Minneapolis Police Department following the death of George Floyd at the knee of a Minneapolis police officer. Minneapolis City Council President Lisa Bender explained why on CNN.
Do you understand that the word dismantle or police free also makes some people nervous? For instance, what if in the middle of the night my home is broken into? Who do I call?
Yes, I mean, I hear that loud and clear from a lot of my neighbors. And I know, and myself too, and I know that that comes from a place of privilege, because for those of us for whom the system is working, I think we need to step back and imagine what it would feel like to already live in that reality, where calling the police may mean more harm is done.
Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey, after letting the mob burn down a police station and generally letting anarchy reign on his streets, and when he wasn't dancing with the protesters, and when he wasn't asking for federal assistance to rebuild after the aforementioned riots, decided to show up at a rally over the weekend where this happened.
It's important that we hear this, because if y'all don't know, he's up for re-election next year. We gonna do next year.
I do not support full abolition.
All right. You're wasting our time. Get out of here.
Yes, that same mayor who let the mob destroy a police station was booed and shamed to exile by that same mob for not supporting the dismantling of that city's police department. This part of the montage is called Virus? What Virus? A group of over 1,200 medical professionals recently signed a letter in support of the ongoing protests and riots across the country, saying in the letter, quote, "As public health advocates, we do not condemn these gatherings as risky for COVID-19 transmission. We support them as vital to the national public health and to the threatened health specifically of black people in the United States. This should not be confused with a permissive stance on all gatherings, particularly protests against stay-home orders," end quote. Many of the letter writers came from the University of Washington's Division of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Not to be outdone, however, the University of Washington's Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluations, they of the always wrong and never close to being correct models, which were the basis of the extended shutdowns in the U.S. due to COVID-19, tweeted this weekend, quote, "Racism and discrimination are critical public health issues that demand an urgent response. Hashtag Black Lives Matter." In Philadelphia, a stunning scene happened as thousands upon thousands of people flooded the center city in a demonstration. Up until very recently, you couldn't go to church in that state because of coronavirus restrictions. Also in Philadelphia, the top editor of the Philadelphia Inquirer newspaper has resigned after running the headline, "Buildings Matter Too," a news story about the damage caused by looters and rioters. That headline was deemed as racist somehow. And finally, we end the montage where it began by bending the knee. Georgia State Trooper O'Neill Sadler gave up a weekend getaway with his wife this weekend to help police in Georgia with protests. He was asked to take a knee to show solidarity with Black Lives Matter when he said this.
"I have much respect, but I only kneel for one person. And that's God. God died."
And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's montage brought to you by Keeps. Kyle and Josh were both losing their hair. No shock since the dreaded male pattern baldness gene ran in their families, but the way they dealt with their hair loss could not have been more different. Kyle kept putting off getting a hair loss treatment, losing more hair by the day. Meanwhile, Josh went to Keeps to learn how to keep his hair because Keeps offers the generic versions of the only 2 FDA-approved hair loss products. Therefore, they are the real deal, and they saved Josh a fortune too because they were the generic versions. All it took was a quick online consultation. He answered a few questions, snapped a few pics of his hair, a doctor evaluated everything, recommended the right FDA-approved hair loss treatment, shipped discreetly to his door. That was the first time he had to leave his couch, was to go to the door and get the package. Everything else he did from right there on the couch. If you want to get started with Keeps, half off your first order right now. That's right, half off your first order at keeps.com/grow. That's keeps.com/grow. During the overtime today, we are going to talk about what is still the ongoing deconstruction of Drew Brees. Literally one of the most pathetic self-immolations and self-enforcing corporal punishments of the dude code I have seen in my almost 46 years on this earth. Now his wife has decided to go ahead and remove whatever last vestige of his man parts once were there. She has decided to jar them up on Instagram or whatever social media outlet she's teary-eyed and crying on. We will discuss this coming up in the overtime today. BlazeTV.com/Deace. That's BlazeTV.com/Deace. If you want to watch it there, you can. If you're already a subscriber, if you're not yet a subscriber, that's where you need to go. Watching the scene with the Minneapolis Justin Trudeau wannabe boy mayor, the rich, I'm thinking of a description. Original, but I don't want to plagiarize anything. Let's go with rich young ruler. Think that'll work?
Sure.
All right, let's go with the rich young ruler who goes to his master. He sits there in the crowd. I mean, that's almost like if that was almost like a progressive parable.
I had this conversation with my wife this morning.
And he sits there in the crowd and he says, "Master, what must I do to be saved? I slaughtered all of these unborn children in your name. We did all this child sacrifice. I enslaved generations to debt. I unleashed drag queen storytime hour. What else must I do to be saved?" The master looks at the rich young ruler, knowing his heart, and says, "Yes, you have done all these things, but there is still one more thing that you must do. Go home and defund the police." And you even saw in that video there the mayor looking down at the ground, dejected as he walked away, knowing that that was a bridge too far, that was a commitment that he could not make, which made all of the other acts of devotion worthless. Let those who have ears to hear, let them hear. Let's move on to a story that a lot of you around the country are going to think is parochial, but it is not. It's cancerous, and it's going to metastasize, and it's coming your way. So get ready. I first got to know Kirk Ferentz, the Iowa football coach, 20 years ago, breaking into sports talk radio. Even though I was not an Iowa fan, I'm still not. And kind of built a reputation for being an Iowa hater, skeptic, having moved here. Having grown up in Michigan and moving here, it's weird now. I'm getting my comeuppance now. But when I was growing up, Michigan just beat Ohio State all the time. I knew it was a big rivalry, but I didn't live or die with it. I was not under the assumption we were going to win like 75, 80% of the time. And we did when I was growing up. But growing up in the 80s, Iowa was a major team. And we were 1 versus 2 one year when we played. The next year, we were both like in the top 6 or 7 in the country. These games, in 3 years in a row, or 3 out of 4 years, the game came down to last-second field goals and then was a tie. And then all my family's from here. And so if we lose to them, we come back here for Christmas or Thanksgiving. I got to hear about it all the time. I hated Iowa. They were the big rival to me because it was personal. So now I'm sitting here and someone had the shallow wisdom to give a guy who is not a fan and maybe even can't stand the #1 sports brand in the state a 3-hour local sports talk radio show in the state's largest city and said, go get him. Right? So how am I going to do this? And I realized I can't. That's when I first learned I can't contrive anything. If I don't really believe it, I can't do it. And I'm just never going to be an Iowa fan. But I can become a fan of people. I can get to know the people. And so I made an effort to extend an olive branch, got to know Kirk Ferentz, as well as you can get to know someone that you're not in their home all the time. Okay. I got pictures of Kirk Ferentz with my kids. I was around their program quite a bit. And he could not have been friendlier in extending the olive branch back to me. In fact, when I got fired from my first sports talk radio job, and we were doing budget cutbacks, and I got into a big argument with the program director about how he was handling his business, and I let my temper get the best of me. Was out in the parking lot during a commercial break of my own show. He fired me in the middle of my own show and then told me to go back on the air. So I think he wanted me to go on the air and lose my mind so that he could get away with not having to pay me unemployment. But I went in there and just finished my show. The next day was no, that was actually in the dead of winter when I got fired from my next sports talk radio job because the station went out of business.
Many firings just
it happened a lot. I got fired a lot. All right. When I got fired from my second sports talk radio job, the next day was Iowa Football Media Day, and that program director, who was still at my old station when he saw the new station I was at went out of business, he took a lot of shots at me. Now, don't worry, that program director and he passed away a few years ago. Him and I reconciled. He used to come play poker at my house the last few years before he passed away. So it's all good. Okay. It's all, we're boys. We had our fight, everybody threw their punch, and now we're like buddies, right? Okay. But the next day, he took a bunch of shots at me in the newspaper, and I'm not that good, and I'm overrated, and because he thought he had the last laugh. And I got to go face all my media brethren, with my name getting dragged in the dirt in the newspaper. And sure enough, first thing, who comes up to me at Iowa Football Media Day and starts giving me a pep talk? Kirk Ferentz does. Starts telling me about getting fired in his own career, how he thought his career was over. He might even leave football coaching. Now he has his dream job to hang in there. I have a high degree. That doesn't mean I agree with every decision he makes. I don't agree with every decision I make. I have to always throw the disclaimer out there because we live in this society where somehow you can't like and respect people unless you agree with everything they think, say, and do at all times. And at any point you disagree, then that means you're a hater and the bridge is burned. I'm not playing that game. I love the guy. Used to know him really well. And if you've covered a college football team, here's something else you need to know. There is simply, and I say this as someone that loves Kirk Ferentz, there is no way that if his strength and conditioning coach was a racist for the last 22 years, because Chris Doyle has been there the whole time Kirk Ferentz has been, there's no way he doesn't know what's going on. No way. It's not possible. Why? Because it's the most important hire in any program after the head coach is the strength and conditioning coach. Because they will spend more time with the players than anybody else, including the head coach, will within the staff year round. They're the only full-time staff member that gets unlimited access basically to the players. Because even though he can't force them to work out more hours than the NCAA mandates, the players can volunteer to come in as often as they want to work out with him. I mean, last year when Alabama's Nick Saban lost their vaunted strength and conditioning coach, this was like a national story because he was there the whole time with Nick Saban. This is an important hire. And there's no way, if this guy, Chris Doyle, is a racist, there's no way Kirk Ferentz did not know. No way. But if Chris Doyle is a racist, hey, I think we ought to hear what the players have to say. I keep being told, look at what the players have to say. I'm looking at what these former players are saying, and they're not really offering any specifics except shoe tying and hoodie wearing. And there were just different standards. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean you couldn't listen to Wheezy, but you had to listen to Merle Haggard instead? I don't know what that means. But, you and I are getting close to 50, right?
Correct.
We're, 15, 20 years younger than these guys are. But we're hitting that get off my lawn, white, middle-aged, or almost old white guy age, right?
Sure.
Would you be shocked to know if a coaching staff that arrived when dial-up modems were still a thing? Okay. Would you be shocked to, and cell phones, you were rich if you had the flip cell phone and we didn't know we were 10 years away from a smartphone. Would you be shocked to learn if Chris Doyle and Kirk Ferentz over the years got a little Gran Torino in them? No. If people that have been there for too long or that long may need to be updated, right? What's the old saying? You live long enough to see yourself become the villain eventually, right?
Sure.
Wouldn't shock me at all. And I do think if you're going to lead young men and young people, you do have to evolve. You do. Doesn't mean you give up timeless truths, otherwise you're rudderless. But on some things that were maybe in your era, like I hear from old people that listen to our show that get offended that I use the word sucks so much. That's a thing in your generation. In my generation, we just don't. We're just not hung up on it and we don't care. So there are things that you do have to evolve on, right? Yeah. You have to evolve if you're going to relate to the young people of this day, right? Sure. Okay. And I bet you that there's quite a bit of that in a program that's as old school as Iowa's. But here's why you need to care about this story, no matter where you live in America today. Because this is a program that has taken how many young black males and developed them into quality men, developed them into graduates of one of the most respected public universities in this part of the country. And for many of them, gave them a shot at untold riches in the National Football League. And no one had a bigger hand in it than the guy whose picture's over my shoulder, Chris Doyle, because he takes those recruits that Iowa gets that aren't ever the top 10 recruits in the country. I mean, Kirk Ferentz's mantra is we sign guys that look like 2- and 3-star guys, and when they leave here, they look like 5-star guys. Who did all that work? Whose program is that? It's his. He did that all. There's no way Kirk Ferentz ends up the winningest coach in Iowa football history without Chris Doyle. Never happens. There's no way Kirk Ferentz may end up in the College Football Hall of Fame without Chris Doyle. Never happens. They need each other. And after all of those contributions to all of those young black lives, suddenly now he's a racist. Maybe he is. I don't know. We just had not more than a decade ago, we learned about a lot of priests that we thought were pretty swell guys, and suddenly they found out they were pedophiles, right?
Yep.
It may be true. But don't you think before we end a guy's reputation, we got to go with a little bit more than a bunch of white social justice warrior media hacks wanting to get their ratio on a Twitter one night? Don't you think? Maybe we ought to, the proverb says one man's story seems true until you hear the other side.
After race riots and coronavirus lockdowns, I'm pretty sure that's just the standard for everything now. There's really no...
Right.
You just get to launch total destruction on anything you want.
And let me go back to the Catholic Church abuse scandal, because remember, the reason that scandal blew up even more than when we found out about the pedophiles is we had found out that people were reporting them all those years. Remember that? Mm-hmm. They were just getting moved. They were getting shuffled around. You were encouraged to keep it quiet. But that's the scandal. The scandal is the church did know. That's why people are so mad, because they knew and then didn't do anything. And it wasn't until the Boston Globe forced them out of hiding, and then they still took years of court settlements, and then we had another wave of this just a few years ago, remember? All these years, not one black father stood up and said, hey, why are you turning my kid into some white bread culture? That's not how I raised him. He's a proud young black man. Not one dad said that. Not one. Not one. All these years, I will guarantee you, Chris Doyle spends more time with young black males in 1 month during winter conditioning at the University of Iowa than the vast majority of white social justice warriors in the media will spend in their entire lifetimes. I guarantee you.
Which is usually what racists do, right, Steve?
Exactly. I guarantee you Kirk Ferentz spends more time in the living room of black America every recruiting cycle than the vast majority of white social justice warrior media hacks will in their lifetimes. And all those times he sat down at mama's house to have dinner. All those times. Not one time in the last 22 years did one mama step up and say, I don't know, man, I just don't think that, they like our kind at Iowa. And so what's happened here is a small group of white activist social justice local media people looking to get their ratio on instantly have blown this entire story up. And then here's what happens when that happens. When that happens, if you're a black player and you like Chris Doyle, you're never coming forward to defend him, because if you do, you're an Uncle Tom. If you're a white player and you like Chris Doyle, you're never coming forward to defend him because you're a racist too. And in fact, in the statement that he put out yesterday, Chris Doyle said, I was encouraged to be silent, but I'm not going to be. Let me translate what that means. I was encouraged to sit here and take my settlement check and walk away with my nice settlement and fall on the sword to save Kirk Ferentz's legacy. I'm not doing that. I'm not getting branded with being a racist when I'm not. Now, maybe he is. Lots of Catholic priests denied it too. Maybe he is. I don't know. But I think, is racism that you had to conform to old school culture from the 50s and 60s of a generation long gone by? That's racism now? Because when I think racism, I'm thinking they gave white players your spot instead of you, right? I'm thinking that that you were put at a competitive disadvantage. But yet a lot of these guys that are speaking out have degrees, are in the NFL right now. So what competitive disadvantage were they put through? I don't know. I'm asking. But I think before you destroy Chris Doyle's life, and if you destroy Chris Doyle's, I'm sorry, I know many of you don't want to believe this, you're going to have to destroy Kirk Ferentz's too. And Chris Doyle told you that yesterday, by the way. All right? He told you that yesterday. I ain't the one. I ain't going under the bus alone. That ain't happening. All right? Because there's no way Kirk Ferentz had no idea what was going on in a strength and conditioning program this entire time. And so here's what this means to all of you watching me right now if you're white. Here's what it means. I promise you that Chris Doyle and Kirk Ferentz have invested more. Even if all these, even whatever, because I still don't know what the specific allegations are. Even if anything comes out that is terrible, truly objectively terrible, these two individuals still invested more time in the lives of black families and young black men than any of you watching ever, if you're white, hardly will likely ever be able to. And then imagine if nothing really bad comes out in the end and what was done to their reputations and their programs. No empathy, no benefit of the doubt. If two individuals that have spent the last 22 years contributing mightily to the improved gross domestic product of black America and the literacy rate and the college graduate rate of black America, if they're not given the benefit of the doubt, then when you're charged, how will you be? And this is why I grew up with a racist dad. Remember him calling me into the living room one night when Vanilla Ice was given some rap song of the year award because he wanted to crow that this was another thing white people were better at. I hate this garbage. I hate it even more now as a Christian, when I truly understand what it means to be in all of us individuals created in the image of God. But that is also why I'm not bowing the knee to the collective white guilt mob. This is another one of your spirit of the age cults I'm not going to join. I don't care what it costs me. I don't care how many friends I lose. I don't care how many people who used to like me suddenly block me, because that happened a lot this weekend. I'm never, ever bowing the knee to your Baal. Bring it. First, they wanted to just have you locked down over junk flat earth science for EVs. in order to destroy the economy. Then they want to have anarchy in the streets to continue ruining your culture with race riots. When you have an opportunity, and these opportunities are dwindling in this day and age, but when you have an opportunity to do business with a company that provides a service that all of us need to some degree, and you know they're not then going to weaponize the money that you give them when you pay them for it, but instead are actually going to back you up, take full advantage of it. And that's where Patriot Mobile comes in. They are trying to help by lowering their prices even further right now. Their U.S.-based team is standing by to design a customized family plan for you that begins as low as $25 a month. Patriot Mobile shares your values. They'll never charge you hidden fees. And unlike Big Mobile, they won't send your hard-earned money to Planned Parenthood or other leftist causes as well. So you can get the same reliable nationwide service and support a company that supports you and your values and the Constitution. It puts people before profits. Switching is easy. You can keep your own phone number, bring your own phone, or get all new if you want to go that route. Right now, when you join their family of freedom-loving Americans, you can also get free activation and a free gift with the offer code STEVE when you call them at 972-PATRIOT. A free activation and a free gift when you give them the promo code STEVE at 972-PATRIOT, or when you go to the website, patriotmobile.com/Steve. That's patriotmobile.com/Steve. Our good friend Bob Vanderplatz is here from The Family Leader. Good to see you, brother. How are you?
Always good to see you. Doing really well. Thank you.
You remember Mayor Pete?
Buttigieg?
Yeah.
Took me a long time to get to pronounce his name halfway right.
Wasn't that like 10 years ago?
That's a long time ago.
Remember when they rigged the Iowa caucuses so Bernie Sanders couldn't win, and we thought that would be the end of Iowa?
And when it looked like the Democrat Party couldn't vote, didn't know what they were doing,
Right.
took days to release the results.
Did you know that earlier this year we had an impeachment? We actually had an impeachment vote. Only the third or fourth time in American history.
Things are moving quick.
That happened earlier this year.
Yeah.
You remember when Joe Biden was dead? Dead man walking, and then in a 72-hour period before Super Tuesday, when they realized Bernie Sanders was about to win, the Democratic Party and its media allies literally went necromancer and helped him win a whole bunch of states that he never even visited once on Super Tuesday.
Now he's the nominee.
And he's the nominee.
I forgot I forgot all about Joe Biden, but yeah, he's the nominee.
Well, so is he.
Yeah.
So you already have something in common. I bring all this up because life is coming at you fast right now, bro.
Really fast. It is.
And today is what? June 8th. It's June 8th today, right?
10 years ago, I ran for governor in the primary. The vote was today.
Was it today?
I reviewed the results, and Darla said, let it go. Let it go.
It's the 8th day of June. It's only halfway through. And already, we just talked about all the major evolutions that we've taken in the year 2020 so far. Let's take a look at what's already been put on the table for the month of June. Just this month. All right, these are the various propositions that we have been asked to accept on what is only the 8th day of June, only halfway through. All right, this is what's been asserted. That World War II and the Allies on D-Day were actually anti-fascists. They were Antifa, basically. Riots are peaceful. Viruses kill you in church, but not in street protests. Police actually make cities less safe. Senility in a presidential candidate is admirable. It's just fine. And U.S. senators should not be allowed to publish op-eds. It's June 8th, Bob. It's June 8th. The summer solstice is about 2 weeks away. What are we going to be talking about then? Not just one ET landing, multiple ETs from multiple different worlds landing here in our world. Your thoughts on what we have watched transpire before our eyes in just the last few days?
I mean, it's very interesting, especially when you put it in that context. And even when you look at, we were supposed to have a Final Four tournament. The Final Four was canceled. That seems like years ago. Who won the NCAA championship?
What is a Final Four?
Yeah.
I mean, I totally forgot that. And since I was 14 years old, I've literally lived my life around that sporting event.
Yeah.
I've taken days off of work, days off of school, and I totally forgot that it didn't happen this year. Yeah.
Yeah, I think what you're seeing, Steve, we just talked about this in our devotions in our team meeting. It's a world in chaos. It's a world trying to look to worldly solutions to solve everything. I mean, who would have thought? Who would have thought? Even us, who would have thought that defund the police wouldn't just be a trending hashtag, but be actually something that the Minneapolis City Council is looking at doing, that they are going to defund the police. And that wasn't that long ago, but that makes no sense. It's a world in chaos looking for worldly solutions. And until we get to a plumb line of, Pilate's question, what is truth? What is right? What is wrong? That's why my tweet last night, it was just a whole deal about let's just recenter things. An unjust killing of a citizen by a cop is wrong. Your outrage is probably right. But looting, violence, arson, destruction, additional killings, that's wrong. Peaceful protests, that's probably okay. That's probably right. Bad cops, that's wrong. Good cops, that's right. So what should we do? Be right, don't be wrong. Because you'll never be right when you do what is wrong, but you'll never be wrong when you do what is right. And I think people right now are asking that question. So when you say revival or bust, I believe revival or bust, bigger than life today. And that is people need to look higher. They need to think bigger. They need to expect more. They need to find out what is truth and how do I love my neighbors as myself today.
Just had a friend of mine send me this, a little birdie friend of mine. Tweet from Des Moines, Black Lives Matter. Have you seen this?
I have not.
Okay. Congratulations to the people of Minneapolis for defunding the police. Okay. You're next at Des Moines government. Okay. And this was in reaction to Minneapolis City Council members have announced their intent to disband the local police department and invest in community-led public safety. And they said, hey, they're going to bring this to our hometown here next.
Well, they're going to bring it to everybody's hometown. And the thing is, what we highlighted last week was Des Moines kind of a model city right now. It's chief of police, the partnerships that they've got built within the community. There's a lot of respect. That doesn't mean that a bad Des Moines cop can't do a bad thing. But I don't think the good Des Moines cops want a cop to do a bad thing. They don't want that to happen. But this becomes a trending thing. What it does is keep erasing what God instituted government for. And that's, first of all, order and justice. But we should seek those things love and mercy and walking humbly at the same time. So, again, I think it's a deal of what is right and what is wrong, and who gets to determine what is right and what is wrong. Because what we've got into for a long time, and we've seen it over the years, not just over the past couple of days or weeks, is my right trumps your right. My feeling trumps your feeling. I get to decide. So therefore, if we don't want a police department, we're going to get rid of a police department. At some point, we have to ask the question about how's that going to work out for you? At what point, tell me how that's going for you.
I think too, what you're watching, we talked about this with the University of Iowa football program before you came on, what's going on there. Because it's a national story, but I think it also has national implications. If you have two individuals that have invested as much in the lives of young black men and their families over the last 22 years as Kirk Ferentz and Chris Doyle have.
Without question.
That with whether it's education, whether it's untold riches in the NFL, life-transforming events. And if right away, without really much of any specific real accusation, but just an overall sentiment or feeling or sense.
Yeah.
If their reputations can be destroyed and they're not given the benefit of the doubt when they have probably invested far more in any given calendar year, frankly, they invest far more in the lives of black Americans than the vast majority of white America will in their lifetimes, just because of the racially diverse pursuit in which they work. Mm-hmm. And that's the requirement of the job, is mentoring and leading young men, and a lot of them are black. If they don't get the benefit of the doubt, then why would we give it to anybody else? And I think what this is why I'm not, last week we had this conversation with you and we talked about the officers kneeling in deference to what happened to George Floyd. And I said at this show, on the show at that time, I got no problem honoring an unjust death. But the Borg doesn't stay on deck 16, Bob.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And the reality is that now we all just admit, I had nothing to do with George Floyd's death. I feel no guilt or remorse about it at all, other than I'm sad for him and his family. But I'm not any more guilty of that as I am. I don't know who threw a rock through Mr. Studebaker's window last week. I didn't do that either. I got enough of my own sins. I'm not apologizing or confessing to anything other than the sins I actually committed. When God made us as individuals in his image, we will all give an account for the lives that we have lived as individuals. Directly to him, and we won't have a group backing us up or any lobbyist or anything of that nature. So that's how the King of the universe, who sent his son to die for us, he couldn't possibly, nothing in this world could possibly love us more than him. So if he chooses to address us thusly, that's how I'm going to address everybody else. I'm not admitting guilt for anything. I'm not guilty of anything. When did I get my white privilege? When I was born to a 15-year-old mom? When we were on food stamps? When I failed the Quick Trip managerial exam? I'm not succumbing to any of this. I don't care how many friends I lose. I don't care how many relationships I lose. I don't care how many bridges it burns. This is another spirit of the age cult. I'm never genuflecting to it, ever. Ever. I'm never doing it.
And I think, Steve, you're right, because we all can take a look at our own backgrounds. And what I'm looking at when I say look higher, how can you be a voice for the voiceless? We try to be that, the family leader, all the time, a voice for the voiceless. Matter of fact, we're fighting like heck right now to get a Protect Life Amendment into Iowa's Constitution to save unborn children. That's being a voice for the voiceless. People who can't speak up for themselves, if you can be a voice for them, great. How is it that you love your neighbors yourself? But those are the things I think we can look at the mirror and say, I can actually do something about this here. But to say that I now have to succumb to everything else, because you're exactly right. Kirk Ferentz and Chris Doyle, those two guys are the epitome of not just the Iowa, but pretty much the national collegiate football world, as far as a tenured head coach and a strength program that is unmatched, and having all kinds of tributes paid to them over the years by former athletes. Now, all of a sudden, because of a couple of tweets, which I think, sure, we'll listen to it. But does that mean all of a sudden everything they're guilty now because of that?
Listen means accept every accusation as true if it comes from a certain disadvantaged group on the intersectionality scale. And if you don't, you're a racist. If you don't, you're a sexist. If you don't, you're a xenophobe. You are entitled to no defense of yourself. The amount of people I saw disappointed yesterday that Chris Doyle came out and said, no way I'm going out like this. No way am I copping to anything I didn't do. And they told me to be quiet. I'm not going to be quiet. So let's bring it on. You want an investigation, a conversation, let's do it. The amount of people that just wanted him to go away and accept the scarlet letter of racist, absolutely pathetic. And I can look at every single one of those replies and say, that guy's never been in a fight. That guy's never been in a fight. That guy's never been in a fight. That guy's a total puss. That guy's a total wuss. That guy's never been in a fight. It's just sad and pathetic. Maybe he is a racist. I don't know. But doesn't he get a say in the all doesn't he get a defense?
But here's what Chris Doyle's statement also said. He said, listen, I know I can be better. I know I got growth areas. All of us do. And if we say we don't, we're lying to ourselves. And he's saying, I'm willing to listen and have the conversation, but I'm not willing just to do what you say, to accept the guilt that's been placed on me and say, now I need to go away, because I don't believe that's the case either. Just like every good cop is outraged by what happened in Minneapolis to George Floyd, that should not have happened. But yet now we're gonna blanket all the cops across the country and say, get rid of the police department because the action of one. Let's hold that person accountable first. Let them go in front of a jury of their peers where he's even innocent until proven guilty. But we need some order back.
That's the thing about this that bothers me too. It's one thing if we all saw the heinous video of what happened to Rodney King and those cops walked. It's one thing if you lose your mind after an obvious injustice and miscarriage of justice like that takes place. This, if anything, this guy's probably has no chance, this officer does, if anything, to get a traditional fair trial, given the political forces that are different now compared to 27 years ago when you had Rodney King. We're going to preemptively riot? See, because I don't think it's about George Floyd. I think that this is an excuse to it's not about, for maybe 5 minutes, it was about a virus we didn't know anything about that was novel. We were concerned about super spreader events and we're not sure. Let's do the research. It was really maybe about that for about 5% of people that were in on the decisions for 5 minutes. And then the rest of the time it was about locking you down and destroying your way of life. And I think that's the same damn thing that's happening here. I think a week ago at this time, it was about George Floyd. A week later now, let's defund the police and Molotov cocktails. It ceased being about him 6 days ago.
It's all about my agenda, whether it be defeat Trump or whatever it is. But I think what George Floyd, on top of coronavirus, what it has exposed is we are a very, very fragile nation. We're a fragile community. We're a powder cake. And I think what it is because we have put our hope into things that do not have eternal value.
I think that's true. And I think it's also because too many people out there are complete and total wimps and have no balls and will just roll over and play dead. Right now, black players won't come out and defend Chris Duo because they don't want to get called Uncle Toms on social media.
Sure.
White players won't come out and defend him because then they're racists. One prominent former Iowa football player got called a racist by another former Iowa basketball player, for defending the actions of World War II war hero Niall Kinnick. Mm-hmm. Okay? I mean, look at what happened to Drew Brees. The amount of people who are willing to stand up to this stuff. As opposed to, see, that's the bigger issue. What you said is the bigger issue. I take that back. But the side issue here is you have a combination of a loss of conviction and then a loss of balls to go along with it.
Well, it's the other thing, Stephen. I got a little bit of ground to stand on. When I used to be a high school principal, and the one thing I knew is that if I allowed graffiti to take place, no matter why it occurred, I was going to get more graffiti. If I allowed things to happen that should not happen. Right. If we didn't have discipline, if we didn't enforce discipline, if we didn't say there's a structure, there's a process to be heard, that's all that stuff, you're just going to have chaos within that school system. It's the same way in the country. There happens to be order for a purpose. There happens to be process for a purpose. It's not a black or white issue. It's not whatever the issue might be, but it's still about let's look higher. Let's have God's law. What is real truth? I think we need to get back to that day. We need to have a conversation about that day. What is truth and what is true love and how do they intersect to impact your society?
Good to see you, man.
Good to see you guys.
We will come back hour 2. We're going to turn it over to you with our weekly town hall. One of our listeners has had it with Trump and he sees weakness. How would you respond to him? We'll get into that when we return. Greetings, back with hour 2, live and on demand here on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin and Aaron McIntyre and all of you. Phone lines are open this hour at 888-900-3393. That's 888-900-3393. You can also let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. Steve@stevedeace.com is how you can email the program. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. If you're a podcast listener, please leave us a 5-star review, whichever podcast platform you prefer, Stitcher, iTunes, etc. The more of those we get, it certainly helps the show to grow. It pleases our overlords down in Dallas as well. And thousands of you have left us 5-star reviews. Please keep those coming because it also pleases us. I think we've all demonstrated over the years we have very fragile self-esteems. We could use that daily affirmation. We need to know from you that we are good enough, we are smart enough, and doggone it, at least somebody out there likes us. Working from home means our data is more exposed than ever before because we're online even more than ever before. That helps to also drive up the worst type of cybercrime known as home title theft. When you're doing it all from home, working and banking especially, and shopping, deliveries, that exposes that data. Cyber criminals are targeting homes. They want the money that they can get by taking loans out against your house. And the crime is called home title theft, and the FBI is warning homeowners against it. Home Title Lock is how you protect your home from these kinds of cyber thieves. Your home's legal title is online, where they find it, forge your signature, and then they state that you sold your home to them. They then take out loans on your home and leave you with all that debt. Banks, your insurance, not even your identity theft service can protect you. But Home Title Lock puts a virtual barrier around your home's title so that this doesn't happen to you. Protect your home right now. Go to HomeTitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim at HomeTitleLock.com. And while you're there, use the promo code STEVE to get 30 free days of protection to help you protect your home through this crisis. 30 free days of protection at HomeTitleLock.com. Promo code STEVE. HomeTitleLock.com. All right, let's get to this week's topic, because I have gotten this email several times in the last week or so. So I think a lot of it stems from dissatisfaction with the lack of aggression on the rioting, maybe a dissatisfaction with a lack of aggression on the reopening. It could also be that a group of you are just getting really PO'd, being told that if you're rioting, it's okay to spread coronavirus. But if I want to open my business or go to church, it's not. So it could be a combination of things. But I've gotten a variation of this note from several of you in the last week. And this one's the pithiest, so I'm going with this one. Plus, I just think it's really cool to say, this is from Felix in Phoenix. I just like that. From Felix in Phoenix, he writes, enthusiastically voted for Trump last time around, talked to friends and family, encouraging them to support him. I've had enough of the empty lip service only to break promises later. Tucker Carlson is right. Well, maybe that's actually a fulcrum here. Maybe that's the hinge point, the tipping point here is Tucker Carlson's rant last week. Tucker Carlson is right, says Felix in Phoenix. One caveat. If Jared and Ivanka were shown the door, I might be convinced to pull the lever for him again, but he'll never let them go, so I'm not voting for Trump again. Now, I don't really have a voice in this debate, because 4 years ago, I was like, this is never happening for me. I just don't trust him. Saw too much disingenuousness during the primary. Saw too little of the more thoughtful Donald Trump that I got to know. And it was just trolling full time. And I'm like, I didn't trust John McCain. I didn't trust Mitt Romney. I didn't vote for them either. So I haven't voted for a Republican nominee since 2004. I guess that's one thing I got in common with Colin Powell. All right. But I'm like, this time 4 years ago, I'm like, this is just never happening. I got invited to go meet with him one-on-one. I'm not doing that. I'm not going to get flipped. I'm just not doing it. I don't think there's not enough of a record there. In fact, there's too much of a record of supporting things I don't agree with. And then you throw in the obvious character concerns, and I'm not doing it. And now we're 4 years later. And maybe it starts from a position of expectations. I mean, mine were guttural, subterranean going in. And they've been way exceeded. And then I see that the American left, the stuff that shows like mine used to tell you they really meant. What they really mean is stuff like defund the police, right? What they really mean is they don't care if the baby's alive. They just want to kill it anyway. What they really mean is you have to use your business to promote their morals against your own conscience, right? The stuff that I used to theoretically connect dots for audiences like this, Todd, and say, this is what this really means. This is where this is ultimately going to go. Right. The quiet part is all being said out loud now, right? And so you throw in, for me, I'm just speaking for me. And just like I didn't lobby people to not follow my lead and not voting for Trump last time, I don't know that you're going to see me lobbying people to follow my lead in voting for him this time, okay? Although I wouldn't rule that out either. It's just not on my radar right now. But throw in the fact that his accomplishment level has been far higher than I thought it was going to be, while also pointing out that I think what Felix in Phoenix is pointing out here, we talk about this on our show all the time. There's the tough talking tweets, and then there's usually the lack of action. But he has moved on some things that, I've wanted the Republican Party to move on for years, and until now they have not. But then I have to now factor into my calculus. I'm just speaking for me. I now have to factor into my calculus where the most likely option political party is at. And that they have effectively, if not explicitly, declared war on me. And I simply can't ignore that. Maybe you can. I can't. So that's part of my mental math as I work myself through this exercise. But I'm working myself through my point is, I'm working myself through the opposite side of this equation now. All right? I'm not looking at it the way Felix in Phoenix is. So my question for you in responding to, or my question to you for the town hall today, our weekly Monday town hall here on Blaze TV, radio and podcast, how would you respond to Felix in Phoenix, who said, hey, I've gone from enthusiastically supporting him, telling friends and family about him. I'm out. Tucker Carlson's right. I'm not doing this unless Jared and Ivanka are gone. Unless Ivanka's shown the door. I didn't vote for them. I don't want that. I'm tired of it. How would you respond to him? 888-900-3393 is the number. That's 888-900-3393. And by the way, I'm not going to put any rules on this. Which means some of the arguments in the past, I was like, you need to give me affirmative reasons. On the day that defund the police is trending, and the Democrat nominee for president has to come out and say, I'm not for abolishing police departments. This is not the day that I am going to say you cannot make a lesser of two evils argument. And oh, by the way, I've never denied that lesser of two evils exists. That's never been my argument. My argument has been everything is the lesser of two evils, so it's a fallacy. Everything is. It's not that it doesn't exist, it's that to some extent in a fallen world, everything is the lesser of two evils. My wife married the lesser of two evils, and so did I. Somewhere there's somebody better. This show is the lesser of two evils. And sometimes it's the lesser of two evils in comparison to itself. Sometimes it's better, purer, more moral, holier than it is on other days. Sometimes the content is better than it is on other days. Everything, see, that's the problem with the lesser two evils. Everything is. So it doesn't define anything for me. Because to some extent, in a fallen, imperfect world, everything is the lesser of two evils. But now that we are sitting here, and the stuff that shows like me were called paranoid, conspiracy theorists, crazy, right-wing nut jobs for saying this is what leftists really meant, now that this stuff is all out in the open, this is not the day for me to say you cannot make about the Democrats argument. We're literally discussing abolishing police departments in order for you to demonstrate that you have white privilege, that allow your home to be looted, allow your body to be raped, murdered, allow your grandparents to be home invaded. Because that can be the only true demonstration that you understand the privilege that you've been granted is to suffer for the name. I'm sorry, was that another pun? I didn't. Was that one intentional? Yeah, it was. But I am curious to see how many arguments are from that bent and how many of them are from an affirmative bent. So what do you think? What would you say to Felix in Phoenix if he was your neighbor and said, hey, I don't want to talk about this anymore, or I want to talk about Trump to my neighbors or anything anymore. I'm not selling him anymore. I'm not even voting for him. Not, at the very least, I told Ivanka's gone. I didn't vote for them. I'm tired of that act. 888-900-3393 is the number. That's 888-900-3393. And you can even agree with Felix in Phoenix if you want. I just want to keep saying Felix in Phoenix. I like it. Isn't that a cool name? Felix.
It's value added.
Phoenix.
Sure.
I like it. I like it. All right. So you can even agree with him or not. What say you? 888-900-3393. Let's begin And I definitely want to know what you two think as well. But let's start with Russ in North Carolina. Russ, welcome to the Blaze. What do you want to say to Felix in Phoenix, Russ?
Well, first of all, I don't know if I'm more impressed with you saying Felix from Phoenix or tough talking tweets. They're both tough to say. But I can't say that either. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, she sells at the seashore. I am a huge fan of you guys. I've been listening to you guys for years. I just want to let you know how much I love and appreciate the three of you. I have seen your demeanor go from it's almost like you were for a minute there thinking that there was no hope and no reason for the show. And I think I messaged Aaron and said, look, you guys pick your head up because God's using you in a big way. My family enjoys listening to you, and just love you all to death. I'm from Orlando, Florida, not too far from where you lived for a little bit, near Castleberry, near the High Lie. Yeah. I don't know if you remember the High Lie there. But,
yeah, absolutely. I remember watching High Lie as a kid. You bet. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And the Benham brothers are good friends of mine. I've done some ministry work with them up here in Charlotte, and I love that you're also obviously evenly yoked with them. My answer, though, to this gentleman is this, and we have to, start looking at this thing eternally. Colossians 3:2 says, we got to view everything from an eternal perspective, and that's where you got to look at it, because in the fall, we're not sure what's going to happen. Is he going to run again? Even we don't even really know. So you got to take it one day at a time, and you got to focus on Christ. And I don't know if the guy's a Christian or not, so there's something that's sort of missing there. But there's something near and dear to my heart on this. I grew up in Orlando, played football at University of Central Florida, and spent some time journeying around the NFL as a punter, and didn't make it. But I've got to meet a lot of NFL players, and I've talked with a lot of them here recently about this, about what's going on. And one of them in particular had a post about Kaepernick on Facebook, and I had just posted on his comment, or on his picture of Kaepernick, and it was basically a picture of Kaepernick kneeling, and then the police officer kneeling on George Floyd. And America is more concerned with Kaepernick kneeling than George Floyd's the police officer kneeling on George Floyd. And I had to challenge him on it. But before I did, I just basically said, hey, look, I'm praying for the situation. And Stacey, I just want you to know I love you. That is it. That's all I said on Facebook. And a bunch of his friends jumped down my throat and said, you can pray all you want and all that. But, what are you doing? What are you doing about racism, Russ? And, a lot of these friends are mutual friends. I haven't talked to them in years, but since they're asking, I threw that out there about the individual. I'm doing my part. I've mentored young men here in Lincoln County for 20 plus years. The Benham brothers were a part of our ministry for a little bit, and love those guys. But these guys go on to say that because of my white fragility and my white privilege, that I'm actually harming these black young men by mentoring them, because I don't understand what it's like to be black. And I am sickened by this. Really it starts out with the man in the mirror. I mean, every time I talk to one of my black friends, it really comes down to in the end, I challenge them on, it's the man in the mirror. If you love Christ, you're not going to be a racist. If you're a racist, you're not a Christian. I mean, you cannot be, those two just don't live together. And it is my prayer that we have someone to choose from. And everything is a lesser of two evils. Man, that's just spot on. And I would say to this guy, to answer your question, because I'm so frustrated right now, because if we're silent too, we're also, we're not being sensitive enough.
Right. You're racist if you're silent, and you're racist if you speak up. Yes. The only thing that doesn't make you a racist is to kneel. That's the only thing, apparently. Yeah.
And then the argument there is, and I'm with you, I am not going to apologize for being white. I'm not going to apologize for being racist, because I'm not, and I'll bow my knee to no one other than Jesus Christ, and that is it. And I'm with you. And you guys, look, keep doing what you're doing, because y'all are making a sweeping impression on America. I love you guys to death. Keep your heads up. One of the things that we do in my family is Bible study, and also on Tuesday nights, we put our heads together so we can get on that buy, sell, hold. That is one of our things. Wednesday, we are eating dinner, and we're like, dude, did we make it? Did we
You need to aim higher, Russ. Russ, let me give you some biblical accountability. You and your family got to aim higher, my friend. All right? You've already wasted too much time on that.
Guys. Keep it up.
All right, thank you, Russ. Appreciate that. Thank you. So, could I translate some of what Russ said as he was trying to connect various dots there? That ultimately, in his opinion, allowing a political candidate who represents these various impulses to win the presidency is affirming them in a way that he is concerned about. Is that a fair analysis of Russ's call?
I believe so.
And I will tell you, that's the number one reason I did something in the 2018 midterms I had not done in 15 years, which is vote straight ticket Republican. Because of what was attempted with Brett Kavanaugh, a Supreme Court justice I warned you was not going to be good and has already not been good, by the way. But it's not. That's separate. Separate. You know what? I don't think David Souter and Ruth Bader Ginsburg are good judges either. I'm not for besmirching falsely their character, bearing false witness, and making it so they can't even coach their kids' basketball teams if they want to because we've so scarlet lettered them, and I would not be a part of that. So to me, it was about the point of if we set the precedent that they can just do this anytime they want, literally just lie and make anything up. I felt like what could I do? I do a show that pushes back on it. What else could I do? Would I be satisfied if I sat here on election day and they were victorious doing that? That I felt like I did everything I could do to push back on it. And the answer wasn't, for me anyway, no. And that's why I went and voted straight ticket Republican for the first time in a decade and a half. Because I wanted to send a message. That's how we get doing stuff like this takes us beyond culture war to civil war. That's outside the rules of engagement. That's dissolve the union kind of stuff. And I viewed my vote in that midterm election as a vote against that, if that makes sense.
Completely.
But that's my mental math. You know, we're individuals. We all get to make our own. Or determine our own mental math. Now, we're not accountable simply to ourselves for that math. You're accountable to your creator for it ultimately. But that's the charge each of us has. So how would you respond to Felix in Phoenix? Let's go next to Carrie in Michigan. Carrie, welcome to the Steve Deace Show here on The Blaze. Carrie, thanks for your call. What do you think?
Hey, Steve, thanks for taking my call. I'm from Missouri. Just to set the record straight.
Go ahead, Carrie. Yep.
That's okay. When I hear Felix bring this up, it really touches a part of me that identifies with that because it's somebody who's setting standards, and he almost convinces me to join along. But when I think about it a little bit more, if we got somebody in there from the Democratic side, there's no way we're going to influence them. And really that's kind of our last hope here is because I know that even though Trump is being influenced by those who we don't agree with or from another worldview, we still have a chance here, some of us, like yourself, have a chance to get the message in there to have, some sort of influence. And that gives me some kind of hope. When we abandon that and totally withdraw, we're withdrawing our voice, we're withdrawing our presence, and we're in a tough time right now. One of the Old Testament scriptures that kind of deal with this, it says, when you've done all that you can to do, you stand. And you stand and just stand there, and I think that's part of our problem with Christians and as a nation, is that we've come to a point that we're just standing, but we're standing against things. And if we'll stand for things, that's when the Spirit of the Lord will come, and He will bring that revival if we truly stand for things that are right.
All right. Thanks for the call, Carrie. Appreciate it. Down there in Missouri, where apparently the Lake of the Ozarks incident a couple weeks ago did not cause the Black Plague.
It did not.
After all. So that's good to know. All right. So Kerry views, in his mind, he views not voting for Trump, given what the alternative is, as standing down. That's how he sees it. And he even shares some of Felix's concerns and appreciates him trying to hold a standard. But his concern ultimately is the standard of the opposition. That he has absolutely nothing in common with that standard, and that they're at a point now where they're ultimately going to push it as far as they possibly can, and he views a vote for Trump as a pushback against that. You can agree or disagree. 888-900-3393 is the number. Let's go to Virginia next, which has, I believe, the worst governor in America. That's where Chris is at. Chris, welcome to the show. What do you think, Chris? Chris, are you there?
I think, yeah, I'm here.
Go ahead, Chris.
You're right about the governor. He's pretty bad. The governor's pretty bad here.
Yep, he is.
The gentleman from Phoenix, and I kind of agree with the last caller, the caller before that, but why now? Why do you want to change now when this country is on fire? We've been voting for Republican garbage for 20 and 30 years now, and we just not had a choice of anybody. Now when the country's burning down is not the time to walk away. Maybe 10 years ago when we were voting for the Bushes or the McCains or whatever, but now when the country's on fire and you hand it over to the Democrats, we're finished. You know, and I don't know what else to say. I grew up in New Jersey. I moved to Virginia, came here in the 1990, and I was a cop here in the beach, and I retired. You know, I grew up in New Jersey, and Donald Trump was a god up there. He was the best. That's all you ever heard about on the news was, oh, he built this, he did that, he's doing this. Donald Trump was the greatest. Of course, he came here and, you know, he ran for president, and all of a sudden he's the worst thing in the world because he became more conservative. But yeah, I would tell him, why now? You can't change that now. It's not the time to do it. My feeling is that the Republican Party is horrible. I'm not understanding why we haven't done anything about that in the last 20 years, 30 years. Nobody says anything. I haven't heard anything from a Republican. I don't even know where they are. Are they here anymore? The one Republican that said anything was who? Mitt Romney. And we don't want to hear from, but he's out there walking yesterday, right? Or the day before.
Yeah.
Who wants to hear from Mitt Romney? Well, but at least he showed up and did something, I guess. I don't know. Tom Cotton's getting destroyed too, but, you know, we expect that kind of stuff when it comes to the New York Times. But I agree also with everybody. I don't know. I listened to Glenn Beck this morning. If you can find that letter and read that letter he got that somebody put out, it was a cardinal from the Vatican.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. Yeah, LifeSite News published it. I read it over the weekend. Yeah, I did. Yep.
Yeah, biblical times.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you know, I faced a lot of things when I was a cop, and I tell you what, I've never been more afraid than I am now. Last week I sat down and I started watching the series of the Bible. And when I got to the episode, it was like episode 4, when Christ was born, I fell to my knees. That was it. So
that's great stuff, brother.
I think that's where we are.
Yeah,
that's where we are.
Yep.
And where we have to go.
Amen. Amen. That's great stuff. And thank you for your service as a police officer as well. God bless you, man. Take care, Chris. All right. We got a few minutes before the break here. So I don't know that I got time to be fair to another caller. Any thoughts on what we've heard so far?
Well, what I've heard is a lot of good and decent Americans who are very, very frustrated with the options before them. Join the club. We've got jackets. I get it. Which is why I've said, I've never said otherwise, that I don't care what you do regarding voting for or against Donald Trump. And I've been as transparent as I can. I said up until the time of coronavirus, I had no plans on voting for him. After coronavirus, my level of frustration with how the lies, the deceit, how that was used for political gain, that I was very much in on a likelihood of voting for him. And then a couple weeks later, do you guys remember what he did? I said, I'm back off I don't remember what it was, but it was something perfectly Trumpian and dumb. And now I'm just back in this nebulous, odd the one who is dumbest last loses. I'll see you in November. I get it. I absolutely get it. Make sure that you can sleep with yourself and look your God in the eye at the end of this thing. That's the best advice I can offer you.
For me, it's this, and I'm sure it is for a number of people as well. I mean, there are times when it's like, to hell with his presidency. I ain't voting for him. There are times when I'm right about there. Maybe I am right there. And then the left goes and does something completely bat crap crazy, pun intended, completely crazy. And then it's like, you know what? Another 4 years isn't that bad. I might vote for him again. Or we'll be going along and then he'll do or say something and expand the Overton window in our favor, say something that you're not allowed to say. And I said to myself, you know what? Maybe he hasn't accomplished a heck of a lot, but I wouldn't mind 4 more years of the Overton window being expanded a little bit in our favor. And then he goes and tweets about how Joe Scarborough murdered a staffer. It's just this complete back and forth all of the time, and it's exhausting. It really is. I don't know, unless you just really are divorced, which I kind of actually respect. If you're just so divorced from actually getting your heart and soul set and you're yourself emotionally invested in what's left of America, if you're just here for, the show, or I'm just here for, I got my guns and my Bible, don't darken my door, the rest of this, I hope for the best, expect the worst. This is all just entertainment. I kind of respect that if you just want the tweets and you just want the kicks and giggles. I totally get that. But where I'm at right now, I still have some hope. It's waning on a daily basis, but some hope that what's left of America can still be saved. And so that's where I find myself all the time. Is Trump a tool to help me do that, or is he a detriment to that? And that's just, he's never going to settle on one of those things. He's just not. That's just not what the guy is made up for. So basically Todd's axiom in 2018, whoever's dumbest last loses. If Donald Trump's the dumbest one last, I'm probably not going to vote for him. If it's the leftist Democrats who nominate a guy with dementia, if they're the dumbest ones last, I'll probably vote for Donald Trump. That's just the way it is.
Listening to you is a lot like the internal dialogue I had 4 years ago, Aaron. And I want to pick up the conversation from there when we come back and get more of your calls as well. 888-900-3393 is the number. That's 888-900-3393. More in a moment. Are we on?
We are on.
My earpiece is not working now. It's just totally dead. Welcome back. Not on the air. Earpiece is dead. Are the lights on? Did we pay the light bill?
Other than that, it's a great Monday.
Yeah, it's going great. Okay. So I hope you guys, when we take some calls here in a minute, you guys can sign language, because I can't hear anything in my earpiece now.
Can Todd talk for a while? How about, what's the next live read?
Rough Greens. I can barely even hear you from across the room. But Rough Greens is for your pet, because just like with our food, stripped of all the live organisms that our food needs, same thing has happened to our dog's food for the exact same reasons: mass consumption and wide distribution. So they got to take out all the stuff that would cause the food to, spoil in a couple of weeks, which just so happens to be the stuff that we actually need. Those probiotics, prebiotics, antioxidants, omega oils, vitamins, nutrients. That's what we need. That's why we're taking so many of those things in supplement form nowadays. Same thing goes for our pets. That's what they need as well. And that's where Rough Greens VitaSmart comes in. It's not a dog food. It's a premium dog food supplement that apparently also not is just nutritious, but tastes great too. At least that's what our dog Cap thinks. He absolutely loves this stuff. So if you want to take the Rough Greens 14-day Jumpstart Challenge today for just $14.95, see the difference in your dog in 14 days or less for less than $15. Go to roughgreens.com/blaze. That's RUFF for roughgreens.com/blaze. That's roughgreens.com/blaze. All right. Before we take calls, I've got something I want to say in response to what you just said, Aaron.
Sure.
And then I'm going to figure out if I can get my earpiece to work so I can actually hear callers when we take them again.
I do have an idea. I can play Smoking Cambodian Toddler while you talk, and I'll come give you the backup earpiece.
Yeah, I may need that because my patience level is beginning to wear thin now. Okay. But I was listening to you work out your own mental math with Trump. And it sounded a lot like the way I felt 4 years ago. Because one of my primary concerns, and I think we even talked about this on the air a lot, and when we were still with Salem at that time, I said this to them. Let's say Trump gets elected and he's terrible. Or let's say he, after he wins the nomination, he goes out there and just blows the general and says all kinds of stupid stuff that sets us back 10 years. Shouldn't we at least have like one show on our bird somewhere on the network who didn't throw all their chips in for him and still has some credibility left for whatever the environment looks like the day after this is over? Remember we had those conversations?
Sure, of course.
Because and we talked a lot about how talking to a lot of families and a lot of people that work in the conservative movement, and even within churches across the country, this generational dividing line. We used to talk a lot about that 4 years ago too. That if you were over 50, you tended to be totally all in for Trump. If you were under 40, you tended to be not in. And then if you were in that middle generation, our age group, you were kind of, well, I'm probably going to vote for him because I don't want the communists to win. I just don't feel great about it. Now, that's not a universal default setting, but that tended to be the trend line that we saw. And I was concerned about allowing ourselves to get branded in this election in ways that would hurt us going forward. Remember? I'm not concerned about that at all right now. And the reason why is because if we don't beat, and this is again me talking, this is my opinion, my analysis of the situation, is that we have gone from a culture war that most people, even in my own industry, wanted to deny, to a cold civil war that is now out in the open now. If we do not win this cold civil war, it won't matter. It won't matter what vestiges of conservatism are left for us to evangelize. I almost said eulogize as a Freudian slip. It won't matter what points we have left for credibility later for future generations. There aren't going to be any future generations. America is going to end as we know it, I believe. Revival or bust is now here. Now, if your argument is that defending Trump's persona gets in the way of me promoting revival, I won't argue with you on that point at all. If that's your point of your line of demarcation, that's your line in the sand, it gets in the way. I can't talk to people about revival because I have to constantly discuss every facet of every ridiculous, idiotic Trump tweet. Okay, then you'll get no argument from me. I don't even pay attention to most of them, and I don't care. And in my last book, I pointed out Trump to me is largely irrelevant. Meaning, the issues we have didn't start with him, and they're not going to end when he walks away. Whether he walks away tomorrow, he walks away in January, or 4 years from now, after he's term limited. All Trump did was make the other side think that it was now safe to be truthful about what they've really believed and wanted to do the entire time. I love my mom to death. She wants to call me all the time. Trump tweeted this. She knows more about it than me. I don't care. He's irrelevant to me. Because I was having these arguments before he got here, and I'm going to be having them after he leaves. So, in my opinion, this has devolved to a point that I'm really not so much concerned about what young millennials may think about immigration policy in 10 years. Because, Trump said that one Mexican judge and they sent us the rapists and thugs. I was concerned about stuff like that 4 years ago. But this thing is decelerated and plummeted so low. I'm not going to sit here and look at you and tell you right now into the camera I'm not going to assure you there's going to be a United States of America 10 years from now. I'm not sure that's going to be the case.
At this rate, I don't disagree. And I don't think a lot of people would disagree.
And that's why that's why I'm not doing the mental math with the underbelly of his persona anymore, because I think that the Visigoths are at the wall. And it's kind of irrelevant to me now. Doesn't mean I'm right. Again, this is just my own mental math that I'm working my way through in real time, like everybody else. Let's go back to the phones and see if I can actually hear anybody. Or Todd, you may have to translate later on. Let's go to Greg in New Hampshire. Greg, welcome to the Blaze. Go ahead, sir.
Hey guys, I love your work and love listening to you guys every day. It's a great place to be able to go and get some news. Your comments on this discussion, I'm right with you on Felix. Trump's never going to get rid of his daughter and his son-in-law. It just won't happen. But one of your other callers made a comment that I think is really important, and it's a mistake, is when we lump all Republicans in together. We'll never make progress as long as we do that. We need to be laser focused on supporting guys like Massey and guys like Jordan and folks like that. And I would say in the next election, the vote for the House against any establishment Republican. If we're going to lose the House anyway, let's get rid of the establishment.
Well, see, that's another animal. He's talking about it's not just the presidency. It's about winning the House, losing the House, how we win it and with whom, with establishment candidates.
I heard something at the end vaguely, if we're going to lose the House anyway, then vote every establishment Republican out.
Right.
A kind of a defensive voting posture, which is if they're not going to have the majority, why do I care if there's 130 Republicans or 198,
sure.
Right? So just go ahead and get rid of all these pukes then and just have if we're going to lose, let's just have a purge. Is that what I heard him say?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now I can see a lot of scenarios, but do you see a likely scenario that the Republicans lose the House and the presidency? I right now today, I don't see that as likely.
I think it's absolutely possible because of the balkanization factor. Because there's just too many districts they can't win, whether Donald Trump is president or not. And there's too many districts the other side can't lose, whether Donald Trump is president or not. Do I think that it's hard to imagine Trump winning without Republicans at least gaining a few seats, right? Like the seat in California that they won back in the special election last month. That I agree with you. I agree with you on that. But I could definitely see a scenario where they don't win back a majority in the House and Trump gets reelected. I could see that. Yeah.
No, but can you see one where he does not get reelected and
the other way? No.
And we lose the House. That's what I'm talking about. Lose both.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see both happening. Yeah.
I don't if we aren't going to have
I don't see a scenario where Republicans win the House back and Trump loses. That absolutely isn't going to happen. But the Republicans could still, the Democrats could retain the majority and Trump could still win, or they could win the majority and Trump could win. But they're not going to win the majority and Trump loses. That's not going to happen.
Then we might not have a country in 10 years. I mean, I can see the disgust over Trump's persona simply being a fait accompli on some level, but people realizing I want a police force and I'm not going to get it if I vote Democrat in the House. I think, and these are my crazy voices in my head talking here, but I don't have a sense of if Trump's baggage is really the thing in the way. That's why I see it as possible that people just are finally done. Guys,
I think it takes way too much. In 2016, we did see, like, Marco Rubio got 200,000 more votes than Trump did in Florida. Okay, we did see Republicans in legislative races outperform Trump all over the country. But what it would take to do that with him now, he's branded the Republican Party. It's his party. It's just like Obama branded the Democratic Party and Reagan. When your guy wins the White House, he is the brand of your party. The idea that you're going to carve out some kind of neutral ground apart from him, that's just not the way human relationships work. That's not the way political parties work. It's why I'm loath to join them, okay? Because I like to have my own ground, and you're really not permitted that. So the idea that there's going to be millions of Americans who are going to be like, no, if you're not voting for Trump, then you view the Republican Party as enabling the things about him that you don't like. You see what I'm saying? The amount of people that are going to think like that are probably relegated strictly to an audience like a show like this. But corporately across the country, if you're not voting for Trump, it's because... And you're not voting Republican at all because you view the Republican Party as having enabled him this entire time. At least that's what's in your mind if you're not voting for him. Make sense?
Oh,
okay.
Yeah,
doesn't mean I'm right. That's just my analysis.
I know. Like I said, I know I'm acknowledging crazy voices in my head, but this may be in all politics is local on steroids, possibly. I just think we need to open up a window into the souls of people doing things that the political patterns of the past just simply can't account for.
Let's go to Jim in New Jersey. Jim, hopefully you can make your point in about 2 minutes. That's all the time we have. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Steve. Trust me, I understand where Felix is coming from. Trust, when I saw the fires burning out in Lafayette Square in front of
I don't know
White
the
House,
piece that you jiggled.
So I was saying that I was when I was hoping actually they would sacrifice Jared to like Major Duncan in Last of the Mohicans. From that standpoint, just so I understand the feeling of giving Jared over the pagan mob. But I could tell you from my own perspective, I was coming home on Sunday with my family and pulling into my driveway. And all of a sudden, as we pulled up, we were doing some gardening, and we just picked up some flowers where my wife wanted to plant. And the Black Lives Matter mob was coming around the bend. We knew they were having a protest down the road at the Borough Hall, but to actually hear people coming around the bend and chanting slogans, and I tell you, it's when your daughter looks at you and says, "It's like, what's going on, Daddy?" And my wife looks at me with fear, almost fear in her eyes, after we all know what's gone out on New York City, about 10 miles away, and you have to go to your garage and take your rifle out of your gun safe just in case. For me, voting for Trump is a no-brainer.
Whoa,
that's a powerful case. I can't argue with that. And what those who would promote that lawlessness would say is, hey, you get a little taste of what it's like in these inner cities all the time. So again, it's not about equality, it's about get evenism. Yet who's been running these inner cities all these years? Who's been in charge in these inner cities all these years?
Democrats.
Democrats have been. I mean, that's the part of this argument I don't understand. I got so many members of my own family who hate the IRS and big government, and yet their answer is to then turn around and vote for more of it. I can totally understand not wanting to vote Republican. I've been a Republican most of my life and didn't want to vote for them most of the time, okay? I totally get it. What I don't understand is the idea of, I hate this, so let me vote for more of it. The Republican Party has 10,000 problems. Responsibility for what's gone on in the inner cities is not one of them. Democrats have run all these cities for decades, sometimes for more than a century.
You know who made that point this weekend too?
Sean King, right?
Talcum X. Yes.
Talcum X. One of the greatest.
But for him to make that point,
right.
Maybe there is some self-awareness after all.
Yeah, I don't get here. Maybe we should do this as a country. Maybe this is our last gasp before national divorce. Everybody that's ever thought that is loyally Republican votes Democrat, and everybody that's loyally Democrat votes Republican. And just completely change the constituency deck chairs, and let's see what happens. Meaning, find out who's really committed to the agendas on each of their platforms, and how much of this is just placating certain constituency bases for power on both sides. For the life of me, I don't understand why what's going on in the inner cities is racist and bad. So I'm just going to vote for all the exact same people that were running those racist and bad inner cities, impoverished inner cities all this time. Does that, I didn't understand vote Republican for less government. They weren't giving me less government. So guess what I did? Guess what I did, Todd? I stopped voting Republican. Vote Republican for good judges. They stopped giving me good judges. So guess what I did? I stopped voting Republican because I wasn't getting what I was promised. Help me understand, though, the other side's argument, which is the inner cities are racist and poverty-stricken, but they're all run by Democrats, so I'm going to vote for more of them. Help me to understand why that's just not dumb on a cosmic scale. That's going to do it for today's show. Back at it again tomorrow, we think, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck. Until then, John 3:17.